Welcome to the Win Again Club Room. My name is Mark Moyer, and I'm super duper excited to have Robert Owens here. I call him Roberto. I don't even know why, but Robert Owens is in the house today, and I'm super excited to have him. I'm going to keep this intro short and to the point. He is the world's second most interesting man, behind that other guy, whoever he is. I'll be asking questions during our conversation here that tie in with some of the things that he's done. But there's a couple things of note that I really like. Number one, I'm pretty sure if I read the book correctly, that he was not only a lifeguard in California, but he did so and he joined younger than he was allowed to, but he kind of figured out a way to sneak his way in. He is also has one of the world's largest Birkenstock collections. And I don't know, do you? Maybe you do. Completed and got through the Kokoro, which is a 50-hour Navy SEAL endurance test. Has also completed the World Marathon Challenge, which is 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents, which is absolutely incredible. But as you'll see with Robert, it's all about your mindset and how you think. And he's an amazing public speaker. I encourage everybody watching this, whether it's here on YouTube, wherever it is, to please consider bringing Robert in to speak to your folks, your company, your group, your organization, whatever it is, because he's an amazing speaker, as you'll soon find out. Oh, that's enough of that crap. Welcome, Robert. How are you?
Thanks, Mark. Good to see you.
Likewise. First things first, a lot of what what I promoted about this particular day today is a new documentary film that really showcases and highlights your incredible rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, 3,400 nautical miles. What was it? How many strokes did we figure out? You maybe around 500,000, or what was the? Try to figure that out ever?
You do about 1,500 strokes every hour and a half. So I forgot what we calculated, but it was a lot of strokes.
It was a lot. But before we go into the actual rowing aspect of things, tell me a little bit about what prompted you to want to do this and who you did it in honor of, if you could.
I think most of you know the story already, and so I don't want to be redundant, but I work with a group called SEAL Fit. I'm a coach, and it's all Navy SEAL coaches. I worked with a guy named Mark Crampton, and he and I do the all-nighters on the 50-hour Kokoro thing. I did it, but then they asked me to stay and be the only non-Navy SEAL coach to coach. And so, and Mark and I would do the first all night. It was a mountain ruck. And then the second, where I blew up my knee. The way I blew up this knee was I was coming downhill, running these guys we started at 10 o'clock at night to get them up to the top. We give them an MRE, and then we run them down the mountain. They have to be down the mountain by 6. It's 9 miles up. It's 9 miles down. And I'm running these guys. Let's go, go. I'm running. I stepped in a hole. And when I stepped in a hole, I went and rolled with it, didn't break the ankle, thought no problem. But when I got down the bottom, sure enough, there was blood. It looked like I'd slid into third base. It wasn't a big deal, flesh wound. But as it turned out, the MRI said I'd torn up a bunch of stuff on the inside. Anyway, that's why the knee replacement, it wasn't because of old age, it was because of stupidity. Anyway, Mark and I do the all-nighter up the first night. Then the second night, we do the all-nighter where we do a run. If any of you know the thing down there, we get dropped off at about Oceanside, and then we do all-night PT running them to La Jolla. And Mark has a grandfather type, and I'm a grandfather type, and so we just talk as we're working out these kids, making them miserable. And he goes home after one of those nights and blows his head off, and it was like, why? Anyway, it so rocked me that I could be so close to somebody with snakes in his head that I had no idea that he was carrying that kind of baggage, that then the world opened up even further for me on veteran suicide. And I just felt I had to do something. And I knew I was going to probably row the Atlantic, so I dedicated it to the Mark Crampton Memorial Row to raise awareness for people that just don't know who they're talking to, that they got issues, and if they don't get burped and they don't work on that stuff will bite them. As it is, it's a blight today on the American military that we have so many guys and women committing suicide. And so it was something that I could do in my realm to try to make a difference and raise funds, but awareness as there are so many needy groups out there trying to do the same thing because there's so many people. They say now there's up to 40 guys a day
Oh,
that
is it
commit
really?
suicide.
Jeez. How,
So
so
that's,
I know you've probably learned quite a bit in the last couple of years about all this stuff. More specifically, you talked about the snakes in their head, but also you mentioned just now, well, what kind of advice can you give people on how to burp them in a sense? Like how do you speak to someone that maybe frees them from wanting to do that sort of, commit suicide?
you can't free anybody unless they're open to acknowledging that they have issues. And most men's pride,
Yeah.
business in general, I'm okay, all good, leave me alone. Let's have a beer, let's play golf. And so if you can't get in their head and say, you're really a weak person because you are afraid and embarrassed to actually go in and deal with stuff that's not a big deal, it's life. And Mark Devine from SealFit and I, we talk about that often, that the guys that are most needy are the most macho. And so they overdo being the stud and macho because they can't let anybody know how difficult their inner life is. And then the guys that are pretty responsible, and pretty mature, and they're not fragile in their ego, like they can be a normal human being versus a superstar or super stud all the time. You say to them, "Are you screwed up? Do you have issues? Or what haunts you?" And they're happy to then say, "Well, yeah, I probably do have some." And
Hmm.
then they talk to you like it's no big thing, and it's not like they've lost their manhood by saying, "Yeah, I probably brought home some stuff from the war," or "I brought home stuff from X, Y, and Z." So it's really hard to work with guys that want to be together all the time. And most of us in our 30s and 40s want to be together all the time, and 50s. We had a Navy SEAL admiral over in Bahrain, and he had, I think he had 29 years in service. He was big man on campus over there. And one day in his office, he took his golf club and broke every single thing in his office. He
Hmm.
broke his chair, he broke his desk, he broke all of his medals, all of the glass casings, all of this with the lights turned off. And he was in there for 2 hours, just swinging and hitting everything. And then he sat down in a pile and didn't move. When they finally, got the door open, here was this guy crumpled in the corner, an admiral. And he had to live the image. And one day something snapped and he lost it. And that was the last the group ever saw him. They put him on a jet, took him to Washington, D.C., and never to be heard of again.
Hmm.
So we all carry stuff, and you either deal with your stuff or the stuff deals with you. And it's the same in my life, and it's the same in your life, and it's the same in kids' lives. So it's one of those maturing things of, am I willing to look in the mirror and actually deal versus say, I don't have a problem, get over it. And many guys drink and OD on work and do all the stuff that guys do or ladies do to keep the screw down and tight, lest that thing blow and all that stuff blow with it. So
Well, I think there's always been, especially in the military or in sports or anything, you'll see that people feel that it's not, whether it's manly or it's not, whatever. As you said, the pride earlier to address mental health. They say, oh, just suck it up and deal with it, kind of a thing. There's been that historically, that sort of thought process. But I think now I'm starting to see a little bit more of a separation where they're saying, look, it's actually okay. It's actually manly or womanly, whatever, to think about that and to address it. Seeing more of that. What are you seeing in that sort of space?
yeah, I think it's becoming more susceptible. I mean, more acceptable to say I'm not perfect.
Mm.
And I think this mental health thing that's going on, the pendulum's going to swing, and then it's going to come back to some thing. Every new thing swings, and so I think it's a good thing because I'm really not, the guy to talk to about all these people with all these mental issues that they probably have much more going on than I can ever imagine. Just think of the foster kids in America. Talk about mental issues.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't have 100 of them, abandonment, rejection, failure, poor self worth, if, and I go down the list um, of people that rightly or wrongly, life has dealt them a tough deck, or it deals that deck at 30 or at 40 or at 50, and they were just so unaware for that. I remember when I lost my home during the recession. I'd never lost at anything in my life. I mean, I worked hard to win in sports and business stuff and, building and buying and selling houses. And, I thought I was good to go. And then, when the guy says to me, don't make another payment on your house, $2.5 million house, went on the market for 700,000. And the judge in town, this presiding judge says, Robert, don't make another payment. You're done. You're cooked. I said, what do you mean I'm cooked? You're cooked. You're done. It's over. Your paper's been sold the third time in India. And
Hmm.
I thought, he says, get ready to just walk out of your house. I said, I just built it 3 years ago, owner build. Sorry. And I remember looking at the world, the cars going by and stuff, thinking, what do you mean? I mean, I can't fix it. And my wife said, you're a man. If you're going to, you're a man. You fix it. You fix things. Figure it out. I said, I'm trying to figure it out. She said, well, figure it out. And I went, I'm trying to figure it out. We got divorced. Like 30 years of marriage. Like, bada bing, this thing. And you go, what was my mental health? My mental health was, I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm a loser. I don't know what to do. I didn't want to go out and see people. I didn't talk to people. I just shook my head and worked out and worked out and worked out, trying to kill that demon inside of me, just make that pain go away. And I'm nothing compared to what some of these guys and ladies go through. And so, people said, you think you have mental health issues? I said, no. I just need to deal with it, move on. Well, my dealing with it was go work out, you know, don't complain, don't whine, don't make a big deal out of it. Don't suck your thumb, find a way to win. Don't, don't do anything but just power on and power through. And, are you screwed up, Robert? No. What are you talking about? And I was probably as screwed up as I've ever been or anybody's been, just started drinking too much and staring off into space. So I just think mental health is a fragile thing, and I'm really not the right person at all to talk to about it, except where I know I'm a patient. And
But you know
you
what?
know,
Maybe, honestly, Robert, maybe you are. I mean, look, if I can talk to someone who's gone through what I'm going through, that's more interesting to me than talking to I don't know, a therapist or somebody. I don't, maybe that's what, and maybe you're the perfect step to get to that next step. Maybe speaking to someone who's gone through stuff, to me, if I can talk to someone who's gone through it, and then someone who's gone through it says, "Look, you should really talk to somebody. I've got a great guy or a great woman you can talk to." Blah blah blah. That might be so. I wouldn't necessarily brush that aside. I think that you're absolutely someone to talk to about this, and maybe you are the link to that next person. But absolutely, I mean,
I'm I'm sure that's true in the sense that you know drinkers know drinkers,
mm,
dopers know dopers, liars know liars, porn guys know porn guys. You can't lie. You can't lie to the guy that's like you. That's why AA is so good. Get in a group of people and they yawn like, "When are you going to shut up and deal?" Like, you're so full of shit. Just shut up and deal. And you guys have been at AA for 20 years. They've heard everything and seen everything. And what happened for me in that sense, you're right. I got phone calls from all across the country. Are you alive? What happened to you? And I'm going through it. Can you talk to me? And guys started flying me in from around the country just to have coffee with them and just sit with me for 2 days and burp me change my diaper because I don't know what to do, and you've been through it. So we call that in Christianity, we call that turning your misery into ministry. And so it's sad to think that you got to go through stuff, but that stuff can be turned from lemons to lemonade to help other people. You just have to get out of yourself and use it. But mental health is a fragile thing, and I'm probably way more fragile than I know.
That's cool. Well, there's that side, and then there's also the physical side, and they actually are usually intertwined. I was just commenting earlier, this is one of my favorite books I say my second favorite, just to give give you a little bit of grief, but Beyond Average, I have to say, I'm not just saying this like they do on talk shows where they say, oh, I really loved your book, blah, blah, blah. I really liked your book. And to me, it was a page turner. I mean, I literally read this over 2 days, and it's a lot, man. I wish you didn't go through so much stuff or wrote less, because it's almost 400 pages. But I did it, I pulled off the Band-Aid and I read through it. And what I like about this is it's to me a page turner. I really was excited to read about each of these, um, things you went through and things you accomplished, because you're not writing this as, look how amazing I am and I did all this stuff. It's more like, look, I got through it and here's how I got through it. And as someone who approaches things sometimes where I look up the big tall mountain, I say, oh my God, I'm never going to climb that thing. The way you write it is you say, look, just little pieces, little steps, and you get up there. But even halfway up, instead of looking up to see how much farther you're going to climb, look behind you, see how far you've climbed, and you will keep on going that way. And one of the parts I really enjoyed, and I remember distinctly, and I don't know what page it's on or any of that stuff, but I remember where you say you're talking about the race you did in Crete and in Greece, and where you said, oh man, I screwed up, man, I brought the wrong sneakers or whatever it was, and how everyone reading it must be thinking, dude, that's the one thing you need to focus on is your sneakers. Like, who cares about the t-shirt and this and that?
Hey,
And you're
Mark,
like,
Mark, we don't have sneakers anymore.
what are they called?
Running shoes.
Oh, all right. Okay,
You
so
have sneakers. I haven't heard sneakers since my grandpa came up, but I know that's probably because you wore Birkenstocks too long and it affects your mind.
got that right. Well, tell me about the running shoes or lava shoes or whatever they were back then. I don't even know. I mean, weren't you running on basically lava, or what was it you were running on in Crete?
Running on had hot black asphalt.
Oh, okay, got it. So, but that distinctly, I remember that, and also the World Marathon, the challenge where you were talking about going from finishing the 26 miles in Antarctica, basically running back onto the airplane, flying to Cape Town, I believe it was, or South Africa, and there was about 100-degree difference, and everyone's feet swell up big time. But you had brought a couple of, I'm sorry, running shoes. Geez, I can't even do it. There were a couple of sizes bigger and you adapted to that. But I think what I want to hear you talk about a little bit now is sort of, because people hear about these accomplishments and you tend to brush them aside like, oh, what's the big deal? Now they are big deal, but at the end of the day, it's this that controls the rest of it, right? Tell me a
Right.
little bit about I know you physically prepared for some things, but how did you mentally prepare for it? And I know that's a big question, but maybe drill it down a little bit.
Good question. You play like you train, and you can't play over your head or over your training very often and get away with it. And so I try to train where I make training more difficult than the tests. And so that difficultness is the mind game. And the mind game is, I'm going to try to make this harder than anybody else would try to make it harder, so that when I'm in it suffering, I have the confidence that I can get through this, because it's not quite as bad as what I was doing 2 weeks ago, to myself. And so that's from special ops training. And like for me, when I swim training for my Ironman, I wear 2.5-pound weights on my wrists. So I put a buoy between my legs, a swim buoy, and then I make it an upper body workout. And I don't swim for mileage, I swim for time. And so I just make that upper body work harder than anybody else's upper body is working harder. Swimming is swimming, but you pull 2.5 pound weights with each stroke for, you know, thousands of strokes. It's like you've been lifting. And so when you finally take those weights off on game day, it's like, what's the problem? You know, these things feel like they have turbos on them. So the mind game is, how can I figure out what I'm going to have to do? Because I don't know what I need to do, but I know it's going to be at least X in difficulty. Like when I trained for the 777, I went online and said, you know, how do you train for the 777? And there wasn't anybody saying anything. And this one guy said, I just ran 5 20-mile runs 5 days in a row to see if I could do it. Because if I could do five, I could probably do 7 26s. So I thought, okay. So I went and got a weight vest and I said, I'm going to see if I can do 5 20 to 23-mile runs with a weight vest in a row. So when I got on the course for the 777, you know, I was free. I was like, man, I feel light. This is sweet. You know, like I can actually get off the ground a little bit. And when others were then moaning and complaining, like, wow, this is really tiring, I'm going, yeah, it really is. No, it's not. this this is feeling sweet, but I can't tell anybody because they'll think I'm stupid or bragging or something. And so I motored for 7 26s, and the first one was cold, and the second one was hot, and fourth one was wet. And, okay, those are different things, but it's not going to get in your head like, wow, I just don't know if I can make this. And I guess that is then for all of us is that it's the way we approach our business, our employees, the way we approach our building, like what Scott's doing, with the Outliers and with Kathy, or whatever you guys are doing, the dentist, how do you do this thing to make sure that you're not making the mistakes, and if you are making mistakes, you have mentors that can coach you so you don't make those singular mistakes that foul you out, and you ask questions from a lot of folks, and then you look for wisdom. And um, I just feel a lot for a lot of really well-intentioned people who just get bit by some off-the-wall thing, and they go, I never thought of that. And you go, you should have. But no one tells you unless you ask those questions. And so getting mentors, reading books, watching videos, get your mind right, go practice it, and then maybe find some people that'll put you through that kind of pressure, because you say, will you please put me in that kind of situation, because I really need to know if I got the goods to handle that for how long. Anyway, and so I think that's an answer of some sort.
Yeah. But did you, I forgive me for forgetting, but did you end up did you try the 5 straight days of 20 miles? Did you try that or?
I did that, but made sure that I went past the 20-mile mark
Okay.
with my weight vest on.
Reservation.
And
Yeah.
I had a course down here on the Pacific Coast Highway where I ran down to where I used to lifeguard. And so I got to Tower 10 and I said, you know what? I wonder if I could get to Tower 5. And so I would just keep going, run on the hard sand by the
Yeah.
beach, and the railroad tracks. And hey, you know what? I got to the pier. I wonder if I get down to T Street. I get down to T Street, people looking at you like, what are you doing? And I just turn around and take a drink out of the public drink thing or whatever, or eat a bar. And I'd come back and say, bada bang, I didn't do 20. I went back to all my lifeguard towers. And they don't have a clue. And I don't care. They know, but I'm having such a fun time. And I get back to the 20-mile mark and I go, this is easy. I'll just go home now and do 20. So it's the way you think, I believe. And when I train kids, it's about, or young men, it's like, let me see how you think.
Right.
And if you think about your thinking, get a hold of it. You play like you train, And if you don't like pressure, don't ever try anything. And learn to love pressure, pressure of creating, entrepreneuring, all that stuff. To some, it's just miserable. To others, it's just a lifeblood because it's so exciting. And I like to have those kind of challenges in my life. And anyway, they sort of, at the end of each of these kind of things, I just stop and I'll just go, I am so alive. I feel so alive. Like, you're rowing across the Atlantic and all the horns are honking for you and stuff. You come in, you go, I just don't think I've felt this exhilarated about being alive and living life since the last one I did.
Well, so we're going to talk about
It's
the
just
Atlantic
fun.
in a second, but Jeff Milhorn asks, well, now that once you're post knee surgery, what's next on the list, or is there, or what?
Chuck Patterson brought it up on Outliers this last week. If you don't know Chuck, look him up. Um, he said, now I'm thinking about a wife. I'm trying to be responsible. And my wife's not here, so I can talk freely.
Ish. Yeah.
The guy that owned the 777, he owns the North Pole Marathon, the South Pole Marathon. He owns the highest marathon in the world down in Chile at 18,000 feet.
Wow.
Anyway, he's just a bizarre single Irish runner, weird guy. And he's made tons of money taking people to do stupid things, and people pay a lot of money to just say, I wonder if I could do that too. Anyway, he's got a new one coming out. And the new one is he founded the Space Athletic Federation. So there's now not just the AAU or NCAA or the NFL. He is now labeled and trademarked the Space Federation, Athletic Federation. So I say to him, hey, what are we doing in space? and, and he goes, we're running marathons. I said, and this is again, last week. He goes, are you in? And I go, because my wife is going, you're not going to do that to me, are you? I mean, I don't want to live alone the rest of my life. I mean, how many stupid, narcissistic, selfish, self-centered, could care less about me things are you going to do? Because she was assured I was going to drown out in the Atlantic. Anyway, so he has in 2025, he's got a space capsule going up from New Mexico, from the space, whatever it's called down there. And they're going to take a capsule up with treadmills. And they're going to keep you up in space, and you're going to float up there, and you're going to run for the first Space Federation Olympic event. And he goes, you're in, right? And I went, last year when you mentioned it, I'm really in. And then this year I'm really in. And then she says, don't you dare do this to me. And I go, I don't know if I'm in. So,
Well, quick turnaround. It's got to be just a couple of days up and back, right? It's not you're not going.
Yeah, you just go up there and float around and get your mileage in. They bring you back down. Yeah. Anyway, the point is, what's your next thing? I'm trying to find one that my wife will not divorce me, and she'll still love me for being so self-centered and selfish. So I'm looking for around something. I'll find it. But I sure would like to go up in space to be the first, intergalactic space run, with oxygen on. What a trip, huh?
I feel like I thought I read somewhere that we're looking at going back to the moon again. I think you should just hold out and do it on the moon versus a treadmill up in space. I don't know. Or maybe the International Space Station. Maybe just kind of run laps inside there. I feel like it's maybe I've been watching too many movies, but I feel that could be neat.
I think that moon thing would be a trip.
That would be a trip.
First moon race, the 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, on the moon. Yeah.
Well, it would have to be, I have to think it'd have to be like a 70-mile race because I think there's, less resistance up there. So less gravity and whatnot. I mean, I feel like I remember you can go boing, you boing, you boing, like that. So it'd have to be a, 260-mile race or something. Come on, man. We got to make it a little hard. Now, when you, I know you do a bunch of speaking engagements to whether it's students and kids or if it's companies and whatnot, but tell me a little bit about, what is your favorite message? Because I know you've got a lot of different things you can talk about, but give me a sense of what is your favorite messaging that you like to share with people to help them all grow?
I think the message that I like the most is turning, there's many different names up for the message, for your change it for your audience, but it's turning your lemons into lemonade and talking about overcoming and turning things that were meant for evil and turn them for good, and talking to people about the issues in your life that have happened to you can work out for your benefit unless you just suck the life out of you because you just can't see past the pain. And so I like to talk about the 20x principle, that there's 20 times more potential in you than you've ever allowed someone to bring out of you. And none of us want people to hold us accountable that much to bring that stuff out of us because it's painful. And I tell them, it's emotionally painful, mentally painful, socially painful, financially painful to do big things. You can't live balanced, and you for that season, and you've got to OD on just going for it, and it'll cost you relationships. It'll cost you all kinds of stuff when people don't get why you're doing what you're doing. And so I like to talk to them and then take questions, and always believing in them, telling them that I believe in them and they should believe in themselves and don't sabotage themselves with limited beliefs. And that's the one I like the most. I was just speaking in the Philippines to all these Iranian businessmen, and the guy asked me, what are you going to speak on? Before I got there, I gave him three messages. He turned them into Farsi, and he handed out notes. And he goes to me, he goes, I don't want any of the stuff that you said you're going to speak on. I said, great, no problem. In the moment, what do you want me to speak on? He said, just get up and talk about you, that stuff you do. And so in the middle of being ready to be introduced in front of these millionaire Iranian business guys, I say, okay. And I talked on this topic, and men started crying and ladies started crying. And I'm the American and they're the Iranian. They're not really thrilled on our foreign policy and stuff. And it's like we all can identify with going through it and making something from it versus it taking the life out of us.
Well, I
Um,
have to think I don't know what it's like for the Iranian business people, but I'm assuming that, in a regime that's like that, talk about limiting beliefs. I mean, I feel like it's pretty well limiting there. And I'm sure to hear you say, look, step out of that shell and be yourself. It's probably a lot more challenging for them than it might be for us, but I'm sure it's got to be exhilarating to hear. And, if it's something that they can do, I'm sure that they'd be really excited to do that.
I I talked a little bit 2 years ago. I did spoke to 5,000 high school kids in South Africa, and I shared some of this, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And after the first school, and seeing the kids stand in line to want to talk, and then they don't want to talk where their friends can hear it. Can we talk alone? Just step away to a seventh grade or ninth grade or 12th grade kid, and they go, "Can I talk to you about my stuff?" And I go, "Sure. What stuff's yours?" Being beaten, sexually abused, alcoholic parents, all that stuff. And I just sat there, and they'd start to cry, and I'd start to cry, and you know, you just believe in them and hug them, and they just go, "Thanks." I go, "Sure. Stay in contact. I'm for you." And you do 5,000 kids and all these kids, and you just go, it's universal that people have stuff and that they need someone to believe in them that they can make it through. And I want to be one of those ones with the days that I got left to say, I believe in you, because it was men that believed in me and pulled me out of my crap. And so everybody needs to run into that power of one, where one person just really believes in you and says, no
Yeah.
matter what you've been through, you have so much more talent and ability, and you can make it. You want to try? And they look at you and they say, can I? And you go, yeah, you can. And then they contact you later and they tell you what they've done to change things. You go, wow, you're huge. You know, you did great. Keep it up. I think there's nothing more fulfilling in the world.
You're kind of like that, golden retriever therapy dog, but one that can speak, which is great. No, I love hearing that because, it's interesting when you say, I think a lot of people want to impact humanity and impact millions, but I always say it just starts with one, and you impact one person, it leads to two, it leads to four, it leads to eight, and so forth. And just what you're talking about, just getting people to communicate more, to ask more questions, and to feel that they can want more and they can achieve more by just sort of quote going for it, I think is so important. I want to shift gears for one sec to back to some of these things that you did, just to hear a little bit more about them. And I especially, I have questions that I'm going to have to ask you about the rowing, and not necessarily the rowing part of the rowing, because that was what you were doing. But tell me a little bit about, so explain to people, because I know the story, and some of the folks here do, but explain to everybody real quickly. So you were part of this team that rowed across the Atlantic, 3,400 miles or so, nautical miles, but you were on a boat that it was 12 of you, six on, six off, right? Rowing and not rowing for 3 hours at a pop. But tell me a little bit about the conditions on the boat. I know that, and the food and how you drank the water and just some of the things like that that people could not imagine being on a boat. It was 43, how many days?
Yeah, 43.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the conditions on there.
The conditions is on both ends of this rowboat is like a pup tent. And so you crawl down into this pup tent with some three places for three people to sleep, and you cook. And there's one on the front and there's one on the back. And you become very close with people very quick when you're touching them almost the whole time for 43 days. Because the boat's going back and forth and you're rolling into them and they're rolling into you and rolling into them. And then you get naked in there, and then you begin to sleep naked. And why? Because it's the only time that your skin dries out, because it's been wet out there. And you get that kind of blue skin, where you've been underwater too long. And so it begins to tear, like your butt begins to tear because it's soft, it's wet. Like I think I was wet nonstop for 12 days, dripping wet. And my hands get soft, my butt got soft. And then you try to, when you're sleeping, sleep with nothing on to try to get some air on it to dry it out. And then put white paste all over yourself that's antiseptic paste. And then you pull your pants back up. And, when you have your feet up on the ceiling with no pants on, and you got your hands rubbing white stuff on your butt with your feet up on the ceiling, and he's doing the same thing next to you.
Yeah.
And then the third guy's doing the same thing. You got three massive hairy butts, and you got this white paste, and your feet are on the ceiling because that's the only way to get length, to get your lower back all full of white paste and stuff. And the boat's rocking back and forth. It's just one of the intimate moments. And if you don't like the guys, that adds another dimension. And then if you're sleep deprived, you're irritatable or irritating to people, and you don't think you are. And so you begin to have another levels of depth of relationship.
You make this sound really glamorous. How can I do this? This sounds like a lot of fun. So,
Are
so
you done with that?
yeah, a little bit. So
I mean, I don't tell that story, but I wanted that for you, Mark. I don't think I told you else about putting your
if you
feet
have
on
any
the
of that,
ceiling.
let me know if you have any of that white powder stuff left over. I'd love to try some one of these days. So you're rowing for the 3 hours or so, and it's, I mean, was it something that, in your opinion, like throughout those 43 days, were there some days that were tougher than others, or was it just a nonstop tough, or was it sort of the first few days were tough and then it just got to be just repetitive, rinse on, rinse off kind of a thing? What was that like?
No, about every day and a half, everything would change. So you may have a warm day and all of a sudden you're just soaked at night. Or you may have moon stars at night and the next morning you're in a hurricane like thing, the waves are breaking on you. So um, you never had much stability to really enjoy it because you were just getting ready because you're on the phone, satellite phone, and they're telling you you have this windstorm about to hit you in 6 hours, and it's gonna push you left off course, and you're gonna have to fight go right to stay in course. Or how long off of Africa are you gonna go on the wrong course before you try to get back on the course to
Yeah.
Caribbean?
Hmm.
And so you never really got settled in where you said, "Oh, this is just great." You may have it for two shifts, hour and a half on the left, hour and a half on the right, 3 hours done. You make it two shifts like that, maybe three, but then some wind element storm is going to come there and sort of, say, here, adapt again. And that took some mental work to continue to go in and out and in and out of the pressure of being beat up on by waves or by wind.
Wow. I mean, look, I want people to watch the documentary. Uh, One is too many. It's I think it's a great sort of a almost like a chronicle of what you went through, but also it's the messaging and what you're really trying to push forward. And I really appreciate that. I do want to jump to one other quick question. Someone did ask, what's on your daily or weekly calendar right now that you protect religiously, non-negotiable for yourself?
My quiet time, my time where I get to reboot, reset my head. I've been a big, you know, some of you know, as a pastor.
Yep.
And so I believe in this thing called time alone, time away, time from, quiet time. And so I try to get up at, and spend at least an hour before I hit the day in thinking about the things I want to think about and do that day. So with five kids, I did not want to just get out of bed and get hammered with get in the car, or why'd you forget your sandwich? Or where's your cleats? I just chaos. You're screaming at each other. Get out of the car. Go. Like I had boys that were just nuts. I mean, like my one son got kicked out of school because somewhere he got some firecrackers in seventh grade, and he started throwing them out of the bus windows at the cars below. And so he's lighting them up, throwing them. All the kids turn around, look at bounce off somebody's windshield and blow up. And so I get a call. Anyway, I don't need to go
Wait,
in
wait,
that.
wait. That's bad.
Pardon me?
That's a bad thing to do.
Yeah. So
Okay.
anyway, I had nonstop stuff with these five kids, and I needed to get my head together and go breathe. It's another day. you know what's going to happen. And so I would get up early in the morning and I would read inspirational materials, read my Bible, read Tony Robbins, read stuff that would help me reset for the day. That how do I turn negative things into positives? And how do I run into problems versus away from problems? And how am I ready that when something happens, I'm not overwhelmed? And um, and I have to psych up. I get quiet and I think about the day and picking up the kids and the school, the people I'm going to work with, this and that. Meaning a leader is always trying to get ready for what can happen and not amazed when something does happen. I believe that life, here's one for you to think on. I believe that life is supposed to be difficult. And if you have a nice day without any difficulty, it's a bonus.
Yeah.
Where most people want to have a nice day, and if something difficult happens, it rocks their world.
Right. Right.
And so I get ready for a tough day. I mean, like the first person at an auto crash, you know, this is my time to step up and head's hanging out, the blood's all over the place. And when everybody's screaming, you run at it. Why? Because I got my mind right early in the morning that no matter what happens today, I'm going to run at it. And it's not going to cause me to freak and lose it like everybody else. Like my daughter was doing flips and gymnastics into the thing with all the styrofoam.
Yeah, yeah.
And she did these back flips and she missed and hit this thing. And she comes up and her wrist was broken in half. It was hanging above her wrist and it was just hanging down. Like my wrist is here, go
Yeah.
up about 4 inches on her arm, and it's just hanging down with the bone sticking out. And she's in seventh grade, doing gymnastics. And she stands up and she goes, Dad, blood, things hanging. And all these mothers sitting there, and some of these men just freak, oh my God, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, quick, think. And I said to her, look at me. And she looked at me and I went, all good. We can do this. No problem. She goes, okay, Dad. And she stood there with all these other kids jumping out of the pit, like blood's coming out everywhere. And the parents are freaking on the little stools,
Yeah.
little benches, And I walk up and walk around, grab her other hand, pull her out of the thing. Parents are, what are you going to do? I said, get me a paper towel roller, So I find an old paper towel thing in the trash can,
Yeah.
wrap it around underneath the wrist, pull that thing up, and I just drive her off to the hospital. And I told these parents, shut up. She doesn't need you freaking out.
But
Relax.
I mean, look, that was always my thing when, with babies, like you've seen when a baby falls over, bumps their head or whatever it is, they look up first. And when they see
Correct.
everyone freaking out, that's when they start crying. If they see
Right.
someone like calm, they're like, oh, all right,
Let's go
shit
fall
happens,
4 or 5 more times,
Yeah, exactly. That's great.
Anyway, I don't know what you folks do listening to me, but I have to get my head squared away that I'm going to have difficulties this day. And if I don't, I get overwhelmed or I have the propensity or the opportunity to be overwhelmed. And so the mind play is everything. And that's just my
Yeah.
quiet time has been my savior, in the sense of thank goodness I was up early this morning thinking and getting ready for what could happen today.
All right. So last question, Your Honor, promise, maybe is, I mean, aside from where you are now, what,
Where am I?
I don't know, somewhere in Southern California somewhere. I don't know, Birkenstock, capital of the world. Um, Newport Beach. How'd I do?
Most people don't know you used to live out here. That's why we connect so well.
That's right. I did spend some time out there. Um,
Yes.
what is your favorite spot on the planet?
Oh,
You've been lots of places.
that's a great thought. I'll give you my favorite cities maybe,
Sure.
um, and the spots around them. My favorite city probably is Cape Town, with a close second being Wellington, the capital of New Zealand,
Yeah.
down close to the South Island.
Oh, cool.
Um, I really like Shanghai, Singapore. I like Brisbane, all for different things. When you go to Melbourne, the wine country there is just tremendous. And it's such an adventure if you go there in the spring or summer because when the winds change, I get into Melbourne to do some speaking, and it's like um, 70 degrees. And all of a sudden the wind changes and the wind comes off the Antarctica, and all of a sudden it gets down to 40 degrees in about 30 minutes. And then the wind reverses and comes off the um, Great Outback, and it goes to 105 degrees the next day.
Wow.
Because it
Yeah.
it's what, and you're eating fish and you're drinking some white wine, and this thing's going back and forth, and you're thinking, this is a trip. Anyway, there's I love Africa. I've been to Africa 16 times speaking. Um, I love there's so many neat things, so many different places, and so. But if I was go anywhere, I go back down to Cape Town, and they have something like in Southern California, the Pacific Coast Highway. They have the gold green route, and it goes all the way around to Durban, and all the surf spots and the golf courses. Uh, um, Ernie Els and all those guys, they have their golf academies for kids all the way around, and there's surf spots too.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
just beautiful. So I have lots of places I like.
That's okay. I mean, that's like, you can't ask for a favorite kid and all that kind of stuff. So I get it. That's awesome. Well, listen, I truly appreciate your time as always. I could obviously speak to you for hours, and you know that. Always love having you here in the club room.
Sure, good to be
Sir,
here.
awesome. And
Good to see you.
and you too, obviously. And look forward to seeing you again in person, wherever and whenever, soon enough.
And we'll take some Boost everywhere we go. We'll just take some Boost and
Oh, a little product placement. Look at that.
hey,
They gotta have it handy somewhere.
okay, thanks.
Yes.